I'm gonna show you some advanced tips today to make your racing maps amazing. I was going to make a basic how to set up a race map type video, but I saw that Richie Toons had already made a really great tutorial on that. He goes through everything on how to set up your checkpoints, how to make sure people can't just drive out at the start of your map, how to make sure people don't get out of their cars, and a whole bunch of other really cool tips about right kind of terrain and pieces to use so that your car can go faster. It's a great tutorial, so I encourage you to go and watch that first. But there's a few things that I wanted to add to that to really take your racing maps to the next level. All right, guys, let's go. Okay, for our first mechanic, I'm gonna show you how to do this where you start the game, you enter the vehicle, and then if you enter like a damage zone, you die, then you respawn back in your fully functional car, or you can go into a mutator zone where the car is destroyed, and then eventually you get warped back into your car. This can be helpful if you're making like a death run, or you have an area where the car explodes if you fall like into a volcano or into a chasm or something, and then you want them to respawn back on the car plate. Or if there's a zone where you want them to go into and it takes away the car and leaves them running and either warps them back to the original car or to a different car. This is how you set it up. Let's start with the damage barrier first. Now, before I get into that, on the player spawn pad, I have it transmitting on channel 1 when the player spawns here. So when I hit start game, that means once it starts, I'll spawn inside the car. Then on the car pad, the only things you need to change are to assign the driver when receiving from channel 1. That makes it so when I start the game, I go into the car. And that's also gonna help later with the damage zone. So assigns driver when receiving from channel 1 is on, and then destroy vehicle when receiving from channel 2 needs to be on. And that's basically all you need to do to set up this mechanic. So now when you start, you spawn in your car, and then when you enter this zone, you die, and then you respawn back in the car. Okay, now let me show you how you do this with the mutator zone. The settings on the vehicle stay the same. So assign driver when receiving from channel 1 and destroy vehicle when receiving from channel 2. And then on the mutator zone, you just need to change the same setting where on player entering zone, transmit on channel 2. So that's gonna destroy the car, but then you'll be left standing here without a car now. Now, how do you get back into the car? Well, you're gonna have to set up another trigger, this one right here, where it triggers when receiving from channel 2, so when the car enters the zone, and then right here behind my head, when triggered, transmit on channel 1, and that warps you back into the car. Now, one thing I have on this trigger is a 3-second delay. So that leaves me standing here for 3 seconds, and then I get warped back into the car. So maybe you could have a little puzzle or something like you have 30 seconds to finish it before you get back into the car or something like that. So that's a nice thing about having other triggers. You can assign it to warp you to cars after it's been triggered. So you could have like an open adventure game where you trigger something and then after a few seconds, it warps you into the car like that. It's really cool. Okay, this next mechanic is for if your guy accidentally flips their car, you want to give them a chance to be able to flip the car back over and then force them back into the car. You can easily make it so the person can never get out of their car, and all you have to do for that is to make the assigned driver when receiving from channel 1 the same as when player exits vehicle. That would also be channel 1. That way they could never exit the car. But what if they flip their car and then they're stuck there forever until the game's over? We don't want that happening in some maps. So I'm going to show you the mechanics so they can get out, flip their car, but they also can't run around forever. Now, one thing I need to mention before I show you this mechanic, every car has a different stability level. So this like normal sedan car I was just driving can flip pretty easily. Same thing with the taxi. The trucks and the sports car are almost impossible to flip. And especially if I have the off-road tires on, it's like almost impossible to flip this thing. I'm trying as hard as I can to flip this, and even if I'm running into things like this, like I'm not getting flipped. Like I can hardly flip my car at all. Like I've been trying for a while now, and like I haven't been able to flip my car yet. Now I'm not gonna say that you'll never be able to flip a car like this, but just know that there is a difference between the different cars and their stability level. Okay, now all you need to do to set up this little mechanic to where they can get out, flip their car, and then get back in is on the car plate. Make sure you assign the driver when receiving from a certain channel. So in this case, I have it on channel 1. And then when the player exits the vehicle, have it transmit on a different channel. So in this case, it's channel 2. And then have a trigger set up somewhere else that activates when receiving from channel 2. So that's the channel when the person exits the vehicle. And then when it receives from there, transmit back to channel 1, which forces them back into the car, but put some sort of a delay on the trigger. So in this case, I made it 5 seconds so they could get out, flip the car, and then it forces them back in. If they don't flip it over in that time period, then it forces them back in the car, and then they have to try again. You can make this longer if you want, 10 seconds or shorter even, but but that's how you set this up. So even if someone tries to like get out of their car and they're like, hey, I'm gonna go mess up your race, it forces them back in the car. They can only stay out for 5 seconds. So it kind of solves that issue of people exiting their car, but also being able to reflip their car over if they need to. Okay, now I want to show you how you can have a starting to your race with like a 3, 2, 1, go type thing. Here we go. 1, 2, go, and then your players can go off to the races. This is very Mario Kart-esque, where you have a little tone that is unique and the lights turning on. So this is a little bit more complex, so bear with me. So first, before I show you how I set up the lights, you have to make sure that once the players are assigned to their cars, there is a slight delay before the countdown starts. Otherwise, it would start right away and people would be like, oh, what's going on? So of course, I still have my player spawn so that when the game starts, it transmits on channel 4, which then warps me to the car because I have the assigned driver when receiving from channel 4 turned on. But also in the car play, I have when player enters vehicle transmit on channel 5, which then brings me over to this trigger, which triggers when receiving from channel 5, and then when it's triggered, it transmit on channel 6, which then activates the music sequencer over there. But there's a couple of other settings on this trigger I need to show you. So I have a 3-second delay, so that makes it so I can sit in my car for a few seconds before the countdown begins. Also made it so you can only trigger this once, and make sure transmits every 1 trigger is on as well. If you don't have the times can trigger at 1, then for some reason this keeps looping, so you don't want that to happen. Okay, now let me show you how to set up the lights and the like music countdown. So first you're gonna want to put down a sequencer and then change the tempo to 60. Now the reason I changed it to 60 is that every block is worth 1 second, so that's easier for me to understand, so that it goes 1, 2, 3 in a perfect 3-second countdown. Then the only other thing I need to change on the music sequencer is that it starts when receiving from channel 6, which is this other trigger here that I set up with the delay. Then I have 3 music tiles and 3 triggers on this sequencer. Now the tones you can choose yourself. I chose the yellow tiles here. It has that nice like drawn out tone kind of thing. And then I have it jump a full octave, so it goes C, C, and then it jumps up to the next C right here. Bing. So that's really easy to set up. So it's 2 of the lower C's, bum, bum, and then the higher C, bing. And then I put the triggers right on top of the music tiles so that they trigger the exact same time as the music tile does. Then this trigger transmits on channel 1 when triggered, this one on channel 2, and this one on channel 3. And those are connected to the lights over here. So the lights I have set up, this one's color red, the initial state is off, and then it turns on when receiving from channel 1. So that's that first trigger. And then this is the same thing, but I have it on yellow, and that it turns on when receiving from channel 2, which is that second trigger. And the same thing with the top one, it's green, but it turns on when receiving from the 3rd channel over there. So that when the game starts, your player is assigned to the vehicle, and then the countdown happens, 2, 1, go. And that's how you set it all up. So now after watching Richie Toon's video and my video, you should have everything you need to have an amazing race map. Good luck, and I can't wait to play your maps!